December the 21st. In the evening, Lupin was very low-spirited, and I reminded him that behind the clouds the sun was shining. He said, "Huh, never shines on me." I said, "Stop, Lupin, my boy. You're worried about Daisy Mutler. Don't think of her any more. You ought to congratulate yourself on having got off a very bad bargain. Her notions are far too grand for our simple tastes." He jumped up and said, "I won't allow one word to be uttered against her. She's worth the whole bunch of your friends put together, that inflated sloping head of a Perkup included." I left the room with silent dignity, but caught my foot in the mat. December the 23rd. I exchanged no words with Lupin in the morning, but as he seemed to be in exuberant spirits in the evening, I ventured to ask him where he intended to spend his Christmas. He replied, "Oh, most likely at the Mutlars." In wonderment, I said, "What? After your engagement has been broken off?" Lupin said, "Who said it is off?" I said, "You've given us both to understand." He interrupted me by saying, "Well, never mind what I said. It is on again. There." December the 30th, Sunday. Lupin spent the whole day with the Mutlars. He seemed rather cheerful in the evening, so I said, "I'm glad to see you so happy, Lupin." He answered, "Well, Daisy is a splendid girl, but I was obliged to take her old fool of a father down a peg. What with his meanness over his cigars, his stinginess over his drink, and his farthing economy in turning down the gas if you only quit the room for a second, I was compelled to let him have a bit of my mind." I said, "Lupin, you're not much more than a boy. I hope you won't repeat it." December the 31st, the last day of the old year. I received an extraordinary letter from Mr. Mutlar Senior. He writes, "Dear Sir, for a long time past I have had considerable difficulty deciding the important question, who is the master of my own house, myself or your son, Lupin? Believe me, I have no prejudice one way or the other, but I have been most reluctantly compelled to give judgment to the effect that I am the master of it. Under the circumstances, it has become my duty to forbid your son to enter my house again. I'm sorry, because it deprives me of the society of one of the most modest, unassuming, and gentlemanly persons I have ever had the honour of being acquainted with." I did not desire the last day to wind up disagreeably, so I said nothing to either Carrie or Lupin about the letter. January the 4th. Mr. Perkup sent for me and told me that I was to be promoted to the position of senior clerk. I was more than overjoyed. Mr. Perkup added he would let me know tomorrow what the salary would be. This means another day's anxiety. I don't mind, for it is an anxiety of the right sort. That reminded me that I had forgotten to speak to Lupin about the letter I received from Mr. Mutlar Senior. I broached the subject to Lupin in the evening. I said, "Pardon me for a moment, Lupin. How is it that you have not been to the Mutlars any day this week?" Lupin answered, "I told you, I cannot stand old Mutlar." I said, "Mr. Mutlar writes to me to say pretty plainly that he cannot stand you." Lupin said, "Well, I like his cheek in writing to you. I'll find out if his father is still alive, and I'll write him a note complaining of his son, and I'll state pretty clearly that his son is a blithering idiot." I said, "Lupin, please moderate your expressions in the presence of your mother." Lupin said, "I'm very sorry, but there is no other expression one can apply to him. However, I'm determined not to enter his place again." I said, "You know, Lupin, he has forbidden you the house." Lupin replied, "Well, we won't split straws, it's all the same. Daisy is a trump, and will wait for me 10 years if necessary." January the 5th. I can scarcely write the news. Mr. Perkup told me my salary would be raised £100. I stood gaping for a moment, unable to realize it. I annually get £10 rise, and I thought it might be 15 or even 20. But £100 surpasses all belief. Carrie and I both rejoiced over our good fortune. Lupin came home in utmost good spirits. I sent Sarah quietly round to the grocer's for a bottle of champagne. It was opened at supper, and I said to Lupin, "This is to celebrate some good news I've received today." Lupin replied, "Hooray, Gov, and I've some good news too. A double event, eh?" I said, "My boy, as a result of 21 years' industry and strict attention to the interests of my superiors in office, I have been rewarded with promotion and a rise in salary of £100. Lupin gave 3 cheers and ordered us to fill up again. Addressing his upstanding, he said, "Having been in the firm of Job Cleanhands, stock and share brokers, a few weeks, and not having paid particular attention to the interests of my superiors in office, my governor, as a reward to me, allotted me £5 worth of shares in a really good thing. The result is, today I have made £200. I said, "Lupin, you're joking." "No, Gov, it's the good old truth." February the 11th. Feeling a little concerned about Lupin, I mustered up courage to speak to Mr. Perkupp about him. Mr. Perkupp kindly replied, "There is no necessity for you to be anxious, Mr. Pooter. It would be impossible for a son of such good parents to turn out erroneously. I wish we could find room for him in this firm." The advice of this good man takes loads off my mind. In the evening I spoke to Lupin about his engagement with Daisy Mutlar. I asked if he had heard from her. He replied, "No. She promised that old windbag of a father of hers that she would not communicate with me. I see Frank Mutlar, of course. In fact, he said he might call again this evening." Frank called, but said he could not stop, as he had a friend waiting outside for him, named Murray Posh, adding that he was quite a swell. Carrie asked Frank to bring him in,